Ambassador Taehyun Park stood at the viewport of the human diplomatic vessel, watching as they approached the massive space station that housed the Galactic Senate. His heart beat fast in his chest. After years of preparation, humanity was finally taking its place among the stars. "Sir, we're ready to dock," said the pilot. "The Artaxian Welcoming Committee is waiting." Taehyun nodded. "Thank you, Captain. Let's make Earth proud." The ship glided into a massive docking bay, filled with ships of various designs from across the galaxy. Their vessel looked simple and small compared to the others. Taehyun straightened his formal blue suit and checked his translator pin one last time. As the airlock doors opened, Taehyun was met by three tall, elegant aliens with iridescent blue skin. They had 4 arms, each in large, multifaceted eyes that seemed to shift color in the light. They wore elaborate robes covered in symbols that his translator couldn't decipher. "Ambassador Park of Earth," said the tallest alien, bowing slightly. "I am Juwoo, Chief Diplomatic Officer and eldest daughter of Emperor Doyan. These are my sisters, Hyuri and Nari." Taehyun bowed deeply in return. "I am honored by your presence. I did not expect to be greeted by the imperial family." Juwoo's head tilted. "Your species' first official contact with the Senate merits proper protocol. Please follow us." As they walked through the station, Taehyun tried not to stare at the many alien species they passed. Some looked nearly human, while others defied description. The halls were vast and made of a material that seemed to shimmer with its own light. "The Senate session begins in 1 hour," said Hyuri, the middle sister. She served as the science minister, according to Taehyun's briefing. "You will be the 3rd speaker." "Will Emperor Doyan be present?" Taehyun asked. "Yes," answered Nari, the youngest sister who held the position of military strategist. "This is a historic session. Father rarely attends routine matters." Taehyun felt his nerves increase. His speech needed to be perfect. The Senate chamber was enormous, with seats for thousands of representatives arranged in rising tiers around a central speaking platform. At the highest point sat a grand throne where Emperor Doyan watched over the proceedings. He was larger than his daughters, with deeper blue skin and elaborate gold markings across his face. When Taehyun's turn came to speak, he walked to the center platform. A hush fell over the chamber. "Honored members of the Galactic Senate," he began, his voice steady despite his nerves. "I stand before you as the first official representative of Earth. My world has only recently mastered faster-than-light travel, but we have a rich history of cultural exchange and diplomacy among our own diverse peoples." As he spoke about Earth's hopes for peaceful cooperation and mutual advancement, Taehyun noticed the Emperor leaning forward, his large eyes fixed intently on the human. "We do not come empty-handed," Taehyun continued. "Earth offers unique biological compounds, our artistic and cultural heritage, and a fresh perspective on galactic matters. We seek to learn, but also to contribute." When he finished his carefully prepared speech, there was a moment of silence before a ripple of conversation spread through the chamber. Taehyun couldn't tell if the response was positive or negative. As he returned to his assigned seat, he noticed the Emperor's daughters watching him with interest. Juwoo, in particular, seemed to be studying him closely. The Senate session continued for several more hours, with representatives from various worlds addressing trade disputes, boundary issues, and resource allocations. Taehyun listened carefully, noting the complex political dynamics at play. After the session ended, a reception was held in one of the station's grand halls. Taehyun sampled strange foods and drinks while trying to make connections with other representatives. Some were openly curious about humans, while others seemed dismissive of Earth as a newcomer. "Ambassador Park," came a voice behind him. Taehyun turned to find Juwoo approaching, holding 2 crystal glasses of a glowing blue liquid. "Your speech was unexpected," she said, offering him one of the glasses. "In what way?" Taehyun asked, accepting the drink cautiously. "Most new worlds plead for protection or resources. You offered partnership instead." Her multifaceted eyes shifted to a warmer purple hue. "It was refreshing." Earth believes in equal exchange, Taehyun said. We have much to learn, but we also have much to give. Ju seemed pleased by this answer. My father wishes to speak with you. This is unusual for a new ambassador. Taehyun followed her through the crowd to where Emperor Dohyun stood with his other daughters. Up close, the emperor was even more imposing, standing nearly 8 feet tall. So this is a human, the emperor said, his voice deep and resonant. Smaller than I expected. Taehyun bowed deeply. What we lack in size, we make up for in determination, Your Majesty. The emperor made a clicking sound that Taehyun's translator didn't catch. Your kind developed faster than light travel only 30 of your years after your first spaceflight. This is unprecedented. Humans adapt quickly, Taehyun replied. Too quickly, some might say. Nari commented, her tone neither friendly nor hostile. We're a curious species, Taehyun acknowledged. But we understand the importance of patience and respect when joining a new community. The emperor studied him for a long moment. We shall see, Ambassador. The Senate has voted to grant Earth observer status for 1 year. After that time, your permanent status will be determined. We are grateful for this opportunity, Taehyun said, bowing again. As the reception continued, Ju stayed close to Taehyun, explaining Senate protocols and introducing him to key figures. Her interest seemed genuine, which surprised him. Why is the emperor's daughter acting as my guide? He finally asked. Surely there are others who could perform this duty. Juwoo's eyes shifted to a curious yellow. Your species intrigues me. You've achieved in decades what took others centuries. I wish to understand how humans think. Later that evening, as the reception was ending, Juwoo approached Taehyun with a small ornate box. Ambassador, would you honor me by participating in the ritual of lasting bonds? It is customary when forming new diplomatic relationships. Inside the box was a crystal vessel filled with shimmering liquid. I would be honored, Taehyun said, relieved to be making positive progress. What does the ritual involve? We simply place our hands on the crystal together and speak our intentions for cooperation, Juwoo explained. They each placed a hand on the vessel, and Juwoo spoke words in her native language that his translator rendered as, May our paths join in mutual prosperity. May our worlds find friendship and understanding. Taehyun responded. The crystal suddenly glowed with intense light, much brighter than Taehyun expected. He felt a warm sensation travel up his arm. When the light faded, Juwoo was staring at him with all 4 of her eyes wide open. The bond is sealed, she said, her voice containing an emotion Taehyun couldn't identify. This is unexpected. Is something wrong? Taehyun asked, suddenly concerned. Not wrong, Juwoo said carefully, but the strength of the connection is unusual for a first contact. As they parted ways, Taehyun couldn't help but feel he had just participated in something more significant than a simple friendship ceremony. What exactly had he agreed to? He would need to consult with his advisors immediately. Little did he know that this simple ritual would change the course of galactic politics forever. Senior advisor Minho paced back and forth in the small meeting room assigned to the Earth delegation. His face showed clear worry as he looked at the data on his tablet. Ambassador Park, do you understand what you've done? Minho asked, his voice tight with concern. Taehyun sat at the table, still processing the events of the previous night. I participated in a friendship ritual with the Emperor's daughter. It seemed harmless. Minho shook his head. That was no simple friendship ritual. I've been researching Artaxian customs all night. The ritual of lasting bonds is a formal alliance ceremony. By their laws, you've created a political bond between Earth and the imperial family. That can't be right, Taehyun said, feeling the cold sensation in his stomach. Juwoo said it was customary for diplomatic relationships. Yes, between long-established allies, not new species seeking observer status, Minho explained. According to their traditions, you're now considered family to the imperial lineage. Taehyun stood up quickly. We need to fix this. I'll speak to Juwu and explain the misunderstanding. That's not how our Taxians work, Minho said. Once a bond is sealed, breaking it would be a grave insult, worse than declaring war. Before they could discuss further, the door chimed. It was a Senate page, informing them that an emergency session had been called. Their presence was required immediately. As they entered the Senate chamber, Taehyun could feel the tension in the air. Representatives from hundreds of worlds were talking loudly among themselves. On the central display screens, images of Taehyun and Juwu during the bonding ritual were being shown. Emperor Dohyun sat on his throne, his expression unreadable. His 3 daughters were at their stations, engaged in what appeared to be an intense discussion. The Senate Speaker, a tall insectoid alien named Richo, called the session to order. This emergency gathering has been called to address the unexpected alliance formed between Earth and the imperial family of Artax. An elderly Artaxian senator named Kyung immediately rose from his seat. This alliance cannot stand. Humans are barely spacefaring. They know nothing of our customs or history. This human clearly manipulated Princess Juwu into forming this bond. Shouts of agreement came from several sections of the chamber. Taehyun felt his heart racing. This was quickly becoming a diplomatic disaster. To his surprise, Nari, the youngest princess and military strategist, stood to speak. Senator Kyung forgets himself, she said, her voice calm but firm. The bond formed naturally and with unusual strength. Our scientists have already confirmed this. The human's genetic and cultural distinctiveness offers valuable diversity to our ancient traditions. Another senator stood. Are we to believe that a species with less than a century of space travel should be granted such privileged status? Many worlds wait millennia for such recognition. The debate grew heated. Taehyun watched as the emperor's daughters conferred among themselves. They seemed to be arguing, with Juwu speaking passionately while her sisters listened. After several hours of debate, Emperor Dohyun finally raised his hand for silence. The chamber immediately quieted. The bond has been formed and verified, the emperor stated. While unusual, we must respect the ancient traditions. Earth will remain on probationary status for the agreed year, but the alliance with Ambassador Park stands. With that ruling, the session was adjourned. As representatives filed out, many gave Taehyun curious or hostile looks. That could have gone worse, Minho whispered. It still might, Taehyun replied. As they prepared to leave, Hyeri, the middle daughter and science minister, approached them. She seemed more reserved than her sisters, her movements precise and controlled. Ambassador Park, might I have a word with you? In private. Taehyun followed her to a small side chamber. Unlike the ornate Senate rooms, this one was simple and clearly designed for work, with screens showing complex data patterns. My sister has placed us all in an interesting position, Hyeri said once they were alone, but perhaps a fortunate one. I assure you, I had no intention of creating a diplomatic incident, Taehyun said. Hyeri waved her upper arms in a gesture his translator indicated meant dismissal of concern. What's done is done. My interest lies elsewhere. My sisters and I have reviewed Earth's governing systems. We find your democracy concept intriguing. Taehyun blinked in surprise. Thank you. It has served us well, despite its flaws. The Artaxian Empire has ruled through hereditary succession for 12,000 years. Hyeri continued. Stability has been our strength, but also our weakness. We resist change, even when it would benefit us. What are you suggesting? Taehyun asked cautiously. Nothing, at this point. Just sharing observations. Her multifaceted eyes studied him carefully. The Senate fears this alliance because they fear change. My sisters and I may have different views on this matter. Before Taehyun could respond, the door opened and Juwu entered. She looked between them with interest. Sister, are you monopolizing our new ally? She asked, though her tone was light. Merely satisfying scientific curiosity, Hyeri replied. With a slight bow to Taehyun, she left. Juwu turned to Taehyun. I must apologize for the confusion. I should have explained the ritual more clearly. Yes, you should have, Taehyun agreed, allowing some frustration to show. On Earth, we don't form political alliances through impromptu ceremonies. Juwoo's eyes shifted to a deep blue. The ritual merely reveals existing potential. It cannot create what is not already there. The strength of our bond was. She paused, searching for the word, unprecedented. What does that mean for Earth? Taehyun asked. It means your world has an advocate in the imperial family now. This is valuable beyond measure. She moved closer. But there are those who will try to break this alliance. Senator Kyung leads a faction that fears outside influence. They have been trying to limit my father's power for years. So I've landed in the middle of internal Artaxian politics, Taehyun said. Politics are always internal and external at once, Juwoo replied. Come, there is more you should know. She led him through a series of secured corridors to a garden area. Unlike the artificial environments elsewhere on the station, this seemed like a piece of a real world, with strange plants and small creatures moving through the foliage. This is modeled after the imperial gardens on Artax, Juwoo explained. My ancestors have sat among these same plants for thousands of generations. It's beautiful, Taehyun said honestly. Our empire is old, Ambassador. Age brings wisdom, but also rigidity. Many of us believe we need new perspectives. She turned to face him directly. The bond we formed has given us an opportunity. My sisters and I have been working toward reforms for decades. Your arrival may be the catalyst we needed. I'm not sure Earth is ready to be involved in reforming an ancient empire, Taehyun said carefully. Perhaps not, Juwoo agreed. But events are already in motion. Senator Kyung will not stop with today's challenge. He will seek to discredit you, to break the alliance, and potentially to move against my father. What can I do? Taehyun asked. For now, learn, watch, listen. Juwoo's eyes shifted to a warm purple color. And perhaps share more about how humans govern themselves. My sisters are particularly interested. As Taehyun returned to the Earth quarters that evening, he found Minho waiting with several messages from Earth Command. They were not pleased with the reports of the alliance. They want you to find a way to politely break the bond, Minho said, looking worried. Taehyun stared out at the vast expanse of stars visible through the viewport. I don't think that's possible. And I'm not sure it would be wise. What do you mean? Minho asked. Something bigger is happening here, Taehyun said quietly. The Emperor's daughters seem to be using this alliance for their own purposes. Breaking it now could have consequences beyond what we can predict. So what do we do? Minho asked. We adapt, Taehyun replied. It's what humans do best. Taehyun stood in the massive laboratory complex deep within the Senate station. Around him, Artaxian scientists in flowing lab coats moved between workstations, checking data and examining samples. Hyuri, the science minister, led him through the facility with obvious pride. This is where we study the genetic patterns of all known sentient species, she explained, her forearms gesturing to the various sections. We've been collecting this data for thousands of years. And now you have human samples to add to your collection, Taehyun said, still uncertain about the blood and tissue samples he had provided as part of the Alliance protocol. Yes, and they've proven most fascinating. Hyuri stopped at a large display showing complex molecular structures. Your DNA has unusual properties we've never seen before. In what way? Taehyun asked, trying to understand the swirling patterns on the screen. Human genetic code contains elements that resonate with dormant sections of Artaxian DNA. Hyuri explained, her eyes shifting to an excited yellow. The bond you formed with my sister wasn't just a political ceremony. There was a genuine biological response. Taehyun frowned. I'm not sure I understand the implications. Neither do we fully, Hyuri admitted. But it appears that exposure to human genetic patterns triggers certain evolutionary responses in our biology. Dormant pathways are becoming active. Is that dangerous? Taehyun asked, suddenly concerned. Not dangerous, but potentially transformative. Hyuri's voice lowered. Ambassador, what I'm about to tell you must remain confidential. The Artaxian Empire has been in genetic decline for centuries. Our rigid social structure and limited genetic exchange have led to stagnation. And human DNA somehow helps with this. It appears to stimulate genetic diversity and expression, Hyuri said. We've already seen changes in tissue samples exposed to human genetic material, changes that could benefit our species greatly. Before Taehyun could ask more questions, an alert sounded throughout the lab. Hyuri checked her communication device. My sister has called an emergency Senate session, she said, her tone surprised. We must go immediately. When they arrived at the Senate chamber, it was already filled to capacity. Emperor Doyun sat on his throne, looking troubled. Ju stood at the central platform, with Nari at her side. Both appeared unusually formal, even by Artaxian standards. What's happening? Taehyun whispered to Hyuri. I don't know, she replied. This wasn't planned. Juwoo's voice rang out across the chamber as she called the session to order. Honored Senate, my sisters, and I have come to a decision that will affect the future of our empire. A hush fell over the crowd. For 10,000 years, the Artaxian Empire has ruled through singular succession and absolute authority. This system has provided stability, but at a cost. Jiwoo's eyes swept the chamber. We have grown rigid, resistant to change, afraid of new ideas. Senator Kyung immediately rose. Princess Jiwoo, what is the meaning of this? Such matters are not for public discussion. All matters affecting our people should be public, Jiwoo responded firmly. That is one of many lessons we can learn from our new human allies. Taehyun felt hundreds of eyes turned toward him. He tried to maintain a neutral expression despite his confusion. Jiwoo continued, My sisters and I propose to incorporate human governance concepts into a reformation of imperial structure. We will create a constitutional monarchy, with elected representatives sharing power with the imperial family. The chamber erupted in noise. Some representatives shouted in anger, others in support. Emperor Doyun remained silent, his expression unreadable. This is madness, Senator Kyung shouted above the din. Thousands of years of tradition cannot be overturned because of one human's influence. Nari stepped forward, her military bearing commanding attention. It is not one human that inspires this change, but humanity's approach to progress. While we have remained static, they have advanced from primitive technology to faster-than-light travel in less than 200 years. Their adaptability is their strength, Hyuri added, moving to join her sisters at the central platform. And now we have scientific evidence that human genetic patterns stimulate beneficial changes in our own biology. This revelation caused another wave of shocked murmurs through the Senate. The ceremonial genetic exchange between Ambassador Park and Princess Jiwoo has revealed something remarkable. Hyuri continued, Human DNA contains elements that reactivate dormant genetic pathways in Artaxian biology, pathways that could reverse our species' long decline. Emperor Doyun finally spoke, his deep voice cutting through the noise. My daughters, you speak of matters that have been hidden for generations. Explain yourselves. Jiwoo bowed to her father. The Imperial Scientific Council has hidden the truth of our genetic decline for centuries, believing stability was more important than addressing the problem. But we can no longer ignore it. Our encounter with humanity offers an unexpected solution. Not just for our biology, Nari added, but for our governance as well. The Senate dissolved into chaos again. Taehyun watched as factions formed before his eyes, with some senators rallying to the princesses, while others gathered around Senator Kyung. Emperor Doyun raised his hand for silence. When the chamber quieted, he said, These claims require verification. This session is adjourned until the Imperial Scientific Council can present their findings on this matter. As the Senate dispersed, Taehyun found himself cornered by a group of alien reporters, all asking questions about human governance and biology. Security officers quickly intervened, escorting him back to the Earth delegation's quarters. Minho was waiting, looking worried. What just happened? The news feeds are going crazy with stories about human DNA changing our taxions. I'm still trying to figure that out myself, Taehyun admitted. It seems the ceremonial genetic exchange had unexpected effects. This is beyond our mission parameters, Minho said. Earth Command is demanding explanations. Tell them I'm working on it, Taehyun replied, just as his communication device signaled an incoming message. It was from Hyuri, requesting his presence in the imperial family's private quarters. When Taehyun arrived, he found all three sisters engaged in an intense discussion. They fell silent as he entered. Ambassador, Ju greeted him. We apologize for involving you in our internal politics without warning. You must understand, Hyuri added, we've been planning reforms for decades. Your arrival provided the perfect catalyst. I'm just one human, Taehyun said, echoing his earlier statement. I can't be responsible for reforming your entire empire. Sometimes, Neri said, joining the conversation, one is enough. Your species fascinated us from the moment we received your first transmissions. You change, adapt, evolve so quickly. We've been static for millennia. The bond I formed with you, Ju explained, was stronger than any in recorded history between an Artaxian and an off-worlder. Our scientists believe it's because human biology complements our own in ways we're only beginning to understand. And now you're using this to push for political change, Taehyun observed. The two are connected, Hyuri said. Our biological stagnation and our political rigidity are symptoms of the same problem. We've been afraid of change for too long. Taehyun looked at each of the sisters in turn. What happens now? Father will consult with the scientific council, Ju said. They cannot hide the truth any longer. Once the genetic evidence is verified, we will present our proposal for political reformation. And if the Senate rejects it? Taehyun asked. Nari's eyes darkened to a deep blue. Then we may face a constitutional crisis unlike any in our history. We need your help, Ambassador, Ju said softly. Your knowledge of how humans transition between different forms of government could be invaluable. Taehyun thought about Earth's own tumultuous political history, with its revolutions, civil wars, and gradual reforms. Such transitions are rarely peaceful, he warned. We know, Ju replied. But the alternative is worse. Slow decline until our empire crumbles from within. As Taehyun left the meeting, he realized that his simple diplomatic mission had evolved into something far more complex. He wasn't just representing Earth anymore. He had become a catalyst for change in an ancient empire. In his quarters that night, he composed a careful message to Earth Command, explaining the situation without revealing the Artaxian genetic decline, which he considered confidential information. He ended with a request for guidance, though he suspected that by the time he received a response, events would have already moved forward. Change was coming to the Artaxian Empire, and for better or worse, humanity was now deeply involved in the process. Retri Taehyun walked quickly through the crowded halls of the Senate station. People moved aside as he passed, some with looks of respect, others with clear distrust. In the 3 days since the revelation about human DNA, the station had become a hotbed of political tension. Ambassador Park called a voice behind him. Taehyun turned to see Minho rushing to catch up, his face serious. What's wrong? Taehyun asked. Senator Kyung has called for a vote of no confidence in Emperor Doyun, Minho said, keeping his voice low. He claims the imperial family has been compromised by human influence. Taehyun felt a chill run through him. When? The vote is scheduled for tomorrow. The conservative faction has been gathering support all night. They continued walking toward the Earth delegation's office, both aware of the many eyes watching them. What does Earth Command say? Taehyun asked once they were behind closed doors. Minho sighed. They're divided. Some want us to distance ourselves from the imperial family to protect our position. Others see this as an opportunity to secure a stronger alliance. And what do they want me to do? They've left it to your judgment, Minho said. You're the one on the ground. Taehyun nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility. Then I need to speak with the neutral factions in the Senate. They'll decide this vote. For the next 12 hours, Taehyun met with representatives from dozens of worlds. Some were openly hostile, convinced that humans were trying to take control of the Artaxian Empire. Others were curious, asking detailed questions about Earth's history of governance. Your world has had many different systems of government, noted Senator Bora of the Linean Collective, a federation of 7 planets. How did you transition between them without collapse? Not always peacefully, Taehyun admitted, but the most successful transitions came when people understood the need for change and had a voice in shaping the new system. And you believe the Artaxian Empire needs such change. It's not my place to say, Taehyun replied carefully, but I know that systems that cannot adapt eventually fail. By the time Taehyun returned to his quarters late that night, he was exhausted. As he prepared to rest, his communication device signaled. The caller was unexpected. Emperor Dohyun himself. Ambassador Park. The Emperor's deep voice came through. I request your presence. Privately. 20 minutes later, Taehyun was led into the Emperor's personal chambers. Unlike the Grand Throne Room, where he usually received visitors, this space was smaller and less formal. The Emperor sat beside a window overlooking the vast expanse of space. You must be wondering why I called you here, Emperor Dohyun said without preamble. I admit I'm curious, Your Majesty, Taehyun replied. Tomorrow, the Senate will vote on whether I am fit to continue ruling. The Emperor's multifaceted eyes fixed on Taehyun. This crisis was triggered by your presence, by the bond you formed with my daughter. I apologize for. The Emperor raised a hand to stop him. No apologies are needed. Perhaps this confrontation was inevitable. He paused. My daughters believe in you. They believe humanity's approach to governance could benefit our empire. Tell me truly, will these changes they propose benefit my people? Taehyun considered his words carefully. Change always brings uncertainty, Your Majesty, but refusing to evolve brings guaranteed decline. The Emperor's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. An honest answer. You could have offered false assurances. Earth values honesty and diplomacy, even when it's difficult. Another interesting concept. The Emperor rose, towering over Taehyun. My scientific council has confirmed my daughter's claims. Human genetic patterns do indeed activate dormant aspects of our biology. Evolution that should have taken millennia is occurring in tissue samples within days. Is that concerning to you? Taehyun asked. It should be. 10,000 years of tradition threatened by one species' DNA. The Emperor moved to a display showing the Artaxian home system. And yet, I find myself curious rather than afraid. Perhaps that is your influence as well. What will you do about the vote? I will face it, as an emperor should. He turned back to Taehyun. But I wanted to hear your perspective first. You have given me much to consider. The next morning, the Senate chamber was filled beyond capacity. Additional viewing areas had been opened throughout the station, with thousands watching the proceedings. Taehyun sat in the area reserved for diplomatic observers, aware of the historical significance of this session. Senator Kyung took the central platform first, his aged frame somehow imposing despite his size. Honored senators, he began, today we face an unprecedented crisis. The imperial line has been compromised by human influence. A species that has barely mastered space travel now seeks to reshape our ancient empire through biological manipulation and political interference. Murmurs spread through the chamber. I call for a vote of no confidence in Emperor Dohyun, Kyung continued. He has failed to protect our traditions and has allowed his daughters to be swayed by foreign ideas. Several senators stood to speak in support of Kyung's motion, each warning of the dangers of rapid change and outside influence. Taehyun noticed that many of the speakers represented worlds with valuable resources or strategic positions within the empire. When Emperor Doyun entered the chamber, a hush fell over the crowd. He moved with dignity to his throne, but did not sit. Instead, he stood before it, facing the Senate directly. "I have ruled for 200 years, he began, his voice strong. "In that time, I have put the stability and security of our empire above all else. Perhaps too much so." This admission caused surprised whispers throughout the chamber. Senator Kyung speaks of tradition. The emperor continued, "But our greatest tradition is survival. For 12,000 years, the Artaxian Empire has endured by adapting when necessary." He gestured to his daughters, who stood together at their station. "My daughters have presented evidence that our empire faces challenges we cannot overcome through traditional means. Both biological and governmental stagnation threaten our future." At a signal from the emperor, Zhu approached the central platform. She carried an ancient-looking scroll. "Before you vote," she said, "I ask the Senate to consider the words of Emperor Soran, founder of our current dynasty, written 10,000 years ago." She unrolled the scroll and read, "When the stars bring distant allies who can renew the ancient ways, the imperial line must embrace change or face extinction. The strength of our people lies not in rigid adherence to the past, but in our ability to grow stronger through new bonds." The chamber fell silent as the words of their founder echoed through the space. These prophecies were sealed in the imperial archives. Zhu explained, "Accessible only to the royal family. Our founder foresaw this moment, this challenge. We are not abandoning our traditions by considering new forms of governance. We are fulfilling them." Senator Kyung stepped forward again, his voice shaking with emotion. "Convenient interpretations of ancient texts cannot justify overturning thousands of years of successful rule. I call for the vote." The voting process took hours, with each senator required to state their position publicly. Taehyun watched as the tally remained close, with neither side gaining a clear advantage. The neutral factions he had spoken with were split, some convinced by the ancient prophecy, others fearful of rapid change. As the final votes were cast, tension filled the chamber. When the results appeared on the central display, there was a moment of stunned silence. By the narrowest margin, just 3 votes, the motion of no confidence had failed. Emperor Doyun would remain in power. Senator Kyung stood rigid with shock. "This is not the end," he declared. "The conservative faction will not accept human interference in our governance." "There will be no interference," Emperor Doyun replied calmly. "Only consultation. Tomorrow, I will announce the formation of a transitional council to study possible reforms. All factions will be represented." As the session ended, Taehyun found himself surrounded by reporters and curious senators. Before he could be overwhelmed, Nari appeared at his side. "Come with me," she said quietly. "My father wishes to speak with you and my sisters. We have much planning to do." As they left the chamber, Taehyun glanced back at Senator Kyung, who was watching him with undisguised hatred. The crisis had been averted for now, but Taehyun knew this was just the beginning of a long political struggle. The future of the Artaxian Empire and humanity's place within the galactic community hung in the balance. Retreat, the main hall of the Senate station, had been transformed for the ceremony. Ancient Artaxian symbols hung beside the newer emblem of Earth, and representatives from hundreds of worlds filled the space. 6 months had passed since the failed vote of no confidence, months of intense work and delicate negotiations. Taehyun stood before a mirror, adjusting the formal diplomatic attire that combined traditional Earth styles with Artaxian colors. The blue and gold fabric shimmered in the light. "Nervous?" asked Minho, who had become not just an advisor but a friend through these challenging months. "A little," Taehyun admitted. "Today changes everything." "For the better, I think," Minho said. Earth Command is pleased. They never expected our first diplomatic mission to result in such a strong alliance. Their conversation was interrupted by a soft chime. The doors slid open to reveal Juwoo. dressed in ceremonial robes of stunning complexity. "It is time, Ambassador," she said, her eyes a warm purple that Taehyun had come to recognize as happiness. Together they walked to the grand hall. The crowd parted as they passed, voices dropping to whispers. At the center of the hall, Emperor Dohyun waited on a raised platform, with Hyeri and Neri standing nearby. Beside them stood the newly elected members of the Transitional Council, 12 senators chosen to help guide the empire through its reformation. Taehyun took his place on the platform, aware of the historical significance of this moment. The emperor raised his hands, and the hall fell silent. "Today marks a new chapter in the history of the Artaxian Empire," Emperor Dohyun began, his voice carrying effortlessly through the space. "For 10,000 years, we have ruled through tradition and hierarchy. We have maintained stability, but at the cost of growth and adaptation." He gestured to the council members. "The Transitional Council has worked tirelessly to create a new system of governance, one that preserves the wisdom of our traditions while embracing new ideas." One of the council members stepped forward with an ornate box. From it, the emperor removed a document written on material that seemed to shimmer with its own light. "The Charter of Renewal has been approved by the Senate," he announced. "It establishes a constitutional monarchy, with power shared between the imperial family and elected representatives. All worlds within our empire will have a voice in governance." The hall erupted in applause, though Taehyun noticed that some representatives remained silent, their expressions guarded. The conservative faction, led by Senator Kyung, had fought against these changes until the end, but they had ultimately been outvoted. "This transformation would not have been possible without the perspective brought to us by our human allies," the emperor continued, looking toward Taehyun. "Their unique approach to governance and their biological compatibility with our species has awakened paths of evolution long dormant in our people." The emperor beckoned Taehyun forward. "In recognition of their contribution, and in accordance with the ancient traditions of alliance, I hereby recognize the human Taehyun Park as kin of empire." He placed his primary claw on Taehyun's shoulder. "Furthermore, Earth is granted full Senate membership, effective immediately." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Such recognition typically took centuries. Earth had achieved in months what other worlds had sought for millennia. "This is unprecedented, Your Majesty," called a voice from the crowd. It was Senator Kyung, his face tight with anger. "You cannot elevate a primitive world to full status simply because of personal favor." "It is not favor but necessity," the emperor replied calmly. "Earth represents a perspective we need. Their rapid development and adaptability bring balance to our caution and tradition." Kyung looked as if he might object further, but several of his allies pulled him back. The conservative faction had lost significant influence in recent months as the benefits of the reforms became apparent. The ceremony continued with the formal signing of the charter and the swearing in of the new council members. Taehyun felt a strange mix of pride and humility as he witnessed the transformation of an empire that had remained unchanged for millennia. Later, at the reception that followed, Taehyun found a quiet moment with the 3 imperial daughters. "Your world has changed ours forever," Hyeri said, her scientific curiosity evident in her yellow-tinged eyes. "Our genetic research continues to show remarkable results. The exposure to human DNA has triggered an adaptive response in our biology that could reverse thousands of years of decline. And not just biologically," Nari added. "The concepts of representative governance and shared power have revitalized worlds that felt disconnected from the empire." Military reports showed decreased unrest in outer systems. Chuwu, who had worked most closely with Taehyun on the political reforms, seemed contemplative. "This is just the beginning. The transition will take decades to complete fully." "Will you guide it?" Taehyun asked her. "We will," she confirmed. "My sisters and I have been appointed to lead the implementation of the charter. Father will remain emperor, but his role will evolve as the new systems take root." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a Senate page, who bowed deeply before Taehyun. "Ambassador, a communication has arrived from Earth." It is marked urgent. Excusing himself, Taehyun went to a private communication booth to review the message. It was from Earth Command, confirming his new status as permanent ambassador and approving his request for a larger diplomatic team. But there was more. In light of the extraordinary alliance you have secured, the message read, Earth Council has approved the establishment of a direct diplomatic exchange. We are preparing to welcome an Artaxian delegation to Earth. Please coordinate with Imperial authorities. When Taehyun returned to the reception, he found Jiwoo waiting for him. Good news, she asked, noting his expression. Earth has approved a direct diplomatic mission, he told her. They're ready to receive Artaxian representatives. Jiwoo's eyes shifted to a bright, excited blue. That is fortunate timing. My sisters and I have been discussing a similar proposal with Father. We wish to learn more about your world firsthand. You want to visit Earth? Taehyun asked, surprised. Not just visit. We propose to lead the first Imperial delegation to your world, Jiwoo explained. As the architects of the new charter, we should understand the society that inspired many of its principles. The idea of the 3 Imperial daughters visiting Earth was both exciting and daunting. Their arrival would certainly cause a sensation. Earth would be honored, Taehyun said formally, then added more personally, and I would be glad to show you my home. Later that evening, as the reception wound down, Taehyun stood at a viewport looking out at the vast expanse of the galaxy. So much had changed in the months since his arrival. What had begun as a simple diplomatic mission had transformed into something no one could have predicted. Jiwoo joined him at the viewport. What are you thinking, Ambassador? About connections, he replied. How one small link between 2 very different cultures can change the course of history. Indeed, she agreed. Perhaps the stars themselves arranged our meeting. My people have a saying, Taehyun said. The right person at the right time can change everything. Your people have much wisdom, Jiwoo observed. We look forward to learning more. As she left, Taehyun continued gazing at the stars. Somehow, one human diplomat had changed the course of an empire that spanned 1,000 worlds. And this was just the beginning.